Trauma Therapist Podcast, episode 553. All right, welcome back to the Trauma Therapist Podcast. My name is Guy Macpherson. My mission is to raise the awareness of trauma and to support and inspire new trauma therapists just starting out on the trauma-informed journey. I do that with my membership community, Trauma Therapist 2.0, my online courses and workshops, and the Trauma Therapist newsletter. If you're a therapist of any kind and you work with individuals who've been impacted by trauma, I invite you to head on over to my website at thetraumatherapistproject.com. That's thetraumatherapistproject.com. All right, let's get started. All right, everyone, welcome back to the Trauma Therapist Podcast. Guy Macpherson here, and this episode is the October issue of the Trauma Therapist newsletter. For those of you who aren't aware, about 5 months ago, I started the Trauma Therapist newsletter. It's a subscription-based newsletter where every month I gather, I scour the internet and curate books, conferences, workshops, events, news in the trauma field, schools and programs that are focusing on trauma. Each month we highlight a different modality. We have a particular therapist on the cover. And as always, my favorite section is the Incredible People section, where we highlight to feature 2 or 3 people in the field who are doing amazing things. So if you're interested, you can head on over to thetraumatherapistnewsletter.com, become a subscriber for a nominal fee, and get this delivered to your inbox every month. But right now, I want to give you just a little snippet of what was included in our October issue. It's jam-packed. First of all, Gianna Gomez is on the cover this month. And I've got to say, this woman was so inspiring to me. In the show notes, I wrote, this is one of those episodes that makes you say to yourself, yes, this is why I want to be a therapist. And her episode was 534.5. You can check it out. But I'm also going to include a snippet of our interview later on here in this episode. She's an LCSW, and she's just so friggin' inspiring and amazing. She started out working with women who were in prison, and through that experience really grew to understand the importance of trauma. And she talks about the different modalities she studied and really how somatic experiencing really helped her out. But we'll get into that a little bit later. So, all right. So that's about Gianna. This month we focus on brain spotting, created by David Grand, PhD. Brain spotting is similar to EMDR for those of you who aren't too familiar with it. And David was on the podcast too. I forget exactly what episode it was on, but he was also on the podcast a while back. But each month we want to focus here on one modality to give you some information on what might speak to you. I mean, there's so many modalities out there, right? And the idea here was, how do you decide if you're interested in this type of work, working with people who've been impacted by trauma? If you're a therapist, you've got to learn about trauma, right? But where do you start? So I wanted to focus each month on a different modality. So that's what we did, have been doing here with the Trauma Therapist newsletter. This month it's brain spotting. And you can check it out. David Grand, let me see here. I'm pretty sure he has a book out, but you can check him out on Facebook too, David Grand. and brain spotting. So, all right. So that was the modality. A bunch of books this month that we feature. One is called The Wounded Healer. Actually, this was an interesting article. So we have also books and articles, but this article is called The Wounded Healer, a narrative review of the mental health effects of COVID on healthcare workers. Really, really interesting. Published in the Asian Journal of Psychiatry. Just give you a little snippet here. In this letter, the authors describe the tremendous stress experienced by healthcare workers in contending with COVID. They advocate for a robust mental health response, both for the public and healthcare force. Let me see here. One of the books, Polyvagal Safety, by Stephen Porges. Now, for those of you who aren't aware, a few weeks ago, I got the opportunity to moderate the Master Series workshop, I think, with Bessel van der Kolk the first day, Stephen Levine on the second day, and then Stephen Porges on the third day. Of course, Stephen Porges, the creator of the polyvagal theory. Super nice guy, really, really interesting. So we looking at this book, one of the books this month. At its heart, polyvagal theory is about safety. It provides an understanding that feeling safe is dependent on autonomic states and that our cognitive evaluations of risk in the environment, including identifying potentially dangerous relationships, play a secondary role to our visceral reactions to people and places. You know, it's interesting because this theory and the understanding of this theory for therapists comes up again and again and again. So again, if you're interested in learning more about trauma and working with people who've been impacted by trauma, I highly recommend a look at Stephen Porges, his works, and I even think he has a kind of a shorter manual that goes over his work. Okay, another book we had here is Me Too Informed Therapy, Counseling Approaches for Men, Women, and Couples by David B. Wexler and Holly B. Sweet. This offers clinicians dynamic ways to empower women who are dealing with harassment and sexual misconduct, work effectively with men who offend, and help couples whose relationships can be enhanced by understanding Me Too issues. The book explores the obvious violations as well as the complex gray areas of sexual misconduct in the relationship to traditional and restrictive gender role norms. And then I include a link to read an excerpt of the book. Just one more of the books that we've highlighted here. I'm not going to go through all of them. Another book is Internal Family Systems Therapy, Step-by-Step Procedures for Healing Traumatic Wounds and Alleviating Anxiety, Depression, Trauma, Addiction, and More by Dr. Alexia Rothman. Super interesting. I love IFS. Richard Schwartz was interviewed on the podcast, and he actually, I don't know if you heard that interview, but you can go to the website and go to the podcast page, the traumatherapistpodcast.com, and type in Richard Schwartz. Let me see if I can find it for you. SCHWARTZ. Find out what episode that is. I know it helps. I'm not one of those people who have all these episodes memorized, but it is coming up. Please hold. Here we go. All right. Episode 163. So that episode, he kind of did therapy on me. It was really cool, really interesting, and I felt very vulnerable, but you'll get a really good idea for how he works and how IFS works. So that was super cool. All right, so moving on from books, some of the workshops that we highlighted here, some of these are have passed, but it'll give you an idea of the kind of things that we highlight here in the Trauma Therapist newsletter. Healing the invisible trauma, emotional neglect with trauma-informed internal family systems. Another thing here that just happens to deal with internal family systems. Really cool workshop. A person's experience from conception to 3 years old is, quote, baked in, unquote, to every cell. The earlier the wounding, the more profound is the effect on one's life. We know about the lasting effects of overtly abusive trusted adults. What is less well known are the effects of chronically misattuned parents who are emotionally neglectful of their baby or young child, sometimes despite their best efforts. With specific regard to emotional neglect, participants will be able to do the following: identify common presentations, learn to recognize common protectors and exiles, become familiar with the legacy burdens, etc., etc. That was by Colleen West, awesome therapist. All right, let me see here. Another workshop that we highlighted was called Trauma and the Embodied Brain, a heart-based training in relational neuroscience for healing trauma. If you're a therapist who works with trauma survivors, you're probably familiar with the many new and evolving modalities available. Regardless of what models and techniques we use, one core dimension of healing is crucial: the deep physiological embodied relationship we hold with our clients. And I talk about that all the time. Research in the field of relational neuroscience offers this intriguing reason. Trauma may be less about what happened to us and much more about who is there to support us before, during, and after the overwhelming experience. Bonnie Benadnock hosts this. This was through Sounds True. She's amazing. She was also on the podcast. Love that woman. You know, I love this work, man. I get to speak with these amazing people. It's incredible. All right. Moving on here, one of the films we focused on was Mind Zone by Jan Hockin, another incredible woman who's also on the podcast. The film is called Mind Zone, and you can check it out by going to www.jhaaken, JHAAKEN, Mind Zone documentary. I'm going to see if it comes up. If I just put Mind Zone document, yeah, you can just type in Mind Zone documentary and it'll come right up there. All right, so let's see where else we are here. One of the really cool things I like doing is in this newsletter. So this comes as an email to you, right? So every month, and one of the things I do is have a paragraph of news and events and hyperlink that, which I love doing. And let me see if I can share some of that with you right now here. All right. Okay, so just learned of this institute, and it looks really interesting, and so I thought I'd mention it. Somatic Wilderness Institute, which is really cool. You can look that up. I'm just going to run through some of this here. I'm not going to do everything. I'm going to run through some of it. Edward Tick's new book is coming out. You might be familiar with him. Awesome guy. Works a lot with veterans and moral injuries. Written a lot of books. His new book is coming out. It's called Coming Home in Vietnam. Coming out in November. You can pre-order it now. I have a link here in the newsletter. Just a little bit about the book. It says, seeking the most powerful healing practices to address the invisible wounds of war. Dr. Ed Tick has led journeys to Vietnam for veterans, survivors, activists, and pilgrims for the past 20 years. All right. New documentary is out, The Wisdom of Trauma with Gabor Mate. Oprah and Dr. Bruce Perry's book on trauma and healing. Everyone's probably heard about that. There's a 2021 Geriatric Healthcare Summit that was out. Again, all this is in this newsletter, which you'll get. And if you sign up, you'll get the same thing, similar with hyperlinks. You can just click on it and go to it. I just want to give you an idea of what we do. Gateway Family Services, run by Michael Remley, awesome guy. He's been on the podcast a few times, super inspiring. They're raising money to help kids out with trauma care by inviting people to become a monthly coffee club member. So you can check that out by going to Gateway Family Services. They work with equine therapy and kids who've been impacted by trauma. How cool is that? Obviously that they're helping them. There was an article in Bloomberg. It was called "Mental Health Could Be the Next Casualty of Global Warming." Super interesting. Learned about Frontiers this past week from Bessel van der Kolk. Frontiers is a leading open access publisher, an open science platform where you can submit articles and also find articles on a variety of topics. All right. Just a bit, kind of gives you an idea of the newsletter. All right, conferences. There are obviously so many conferences, but one of the things that I try to do in this newsletter is really focus on the therapist, the authenticity of this therapist, the relationship of the therapeutic relationship, right, between the therapist and the client. And this is what drives me. We shared one of the conferences is an EMDR Israel Association conference after a complex and challenging period that brought with it significant changes both in the needs of patients and the need to adapt the treatment to the new conditions. This is an excellent opportunity for a meaningful, instructive, and experiential encounter. We will apply some of the good lessons and feedback received from the first conference held in May 2019. All right, one of the conferences, EMDR Israel Association. Another conference we had is a psych conference, is the nation's premier conference on practical psychopharmacology. Another one coming up, the National Conference on Addiction Disorders. Another one, conference coming up, the roots and causes of the perpetuation of violence, with a special focus on intimate partner violence. So a lot of conferences, those are just some that we include in the newsletter. All right, and the next section here is my favorite, without a doubt, and it is the Incredible People section. So each month we feature a couple of people in the field, therapists, trauma therapists, who are inspiring and doing incredible work. The first one this month is John D. Whitis, Whitis. She's been on the podcast before. Super inspirational woman. I'll just read a bit about her bio here. She practices EFT, or emotional freedom technique, or tapping. She says, "My chief work in the world is to help people feel better fast and to see themselves and their problems differently. By first co-creating a safe place for discovery and clarity, I provide accessible support strategies using easy, evidence-based energy healing techniques. Together, we co-create healing, restoration, and a more truthful, powerful vision of themselves. Together, we discover richer meaning, purpose, and a better quality life experience overall." She says, "As a professional practitioner, trainer, and accredited certified master trainer of trainers for EFT International, I teach heart-centered people from all walks of life to embrace confident, masterful ownership of their own creative health and wellness using evidence-based meridian tapping techniques." So that's John D. Whitis. Again, she's been on the podcast, and just really inspiring women and just passionate about helping people. And that's what this podcast is about. Man. All right. So the next person was Dan Allender. We featured another just really inspirational guy. He's a pioneer of a unique and innovative approach to trauma and abuse therapy. For over 30 years, the Allender theory has brought healing and transformation to hundreds of thousands of lives by bridging the story of the gospel and the stories of trauma and abuse that mark so many. Again, he was on the podcast. You can check out his episode and John D's episode by going to the traumatherapistpodcast.com and clicking on the podcast page and just searching for their episodes there. Again, just a little bit about his bio. After receiving his Master of Divinity from Westminster Theological Seminary, he earned his PhD in counseling psychology from Michigan State. He previously served on the faculty at the Biblical Counseling Department of Grace Theological Seminary and the Colorado Christian University. And in 1997, he and a cadre of others founded the Seattle School of Theology and Psychology. The Allender Center was founded by him and Rebecca Allender alongside Kathy Lorzel with the support of the Seattle School of Theology and Psychology. The purpose was to cultivate healing and train leaders and mental health professionals to courageously engage others' stories of harm. So that's it. And in a nutshell, again, the Trauma Therapist newsletter, just wanted to give you a snippet. And so right now we are going to hear, as promised, from our cover person, Gianna Gomez. Just amazing. She, as I said before, began working with women in prison, or just working in a prison, and she, not as a therapist. And by that experience, she learned the importance of trauma, and she went on to become a therapist. And this little clip that I'm going to share with you right now is her experience learning about and integrating somatic experiencing. And you can hear her talk about the importance of learning about the body and bringing the soma, the body, into trauma treatment and merging that with knowledge of the neurobiology of trauma. So check it out, and then we'll finish up at the end here.
And with SE, what it brought was, now I know the whys, that there is actually some neurobiology here going on. And there's some things I can put my finger on and realize and explain and be able to share with my clients. This is what's happening with your autonomic nervous system when this occurs. This is what happens when you walk into a room and you feel like, oh, I need to get out of here. And you trying to tell yourself, no, stay, let me use all of my tools to stay. And your body and everything else is telling you, leave, get out here. And you leave and you go. And then you feel really upset and bothered by the fact that you didn't do that, didn't stay in that room, didn't stay in that store, didn't stay in wherever it is that you were going, even though you've had tons of work and maybe you've had tons of therapy. And so it gave me a different framework of, and being able to, one, explain and to understand me to understand. Mm-hmm. And then it helped me to understand my own trauma, my own history and my own trauma, and feel it from a different internal level. And so that to me, like, was mind-boggling to me. It was like, wow, here is this information that I'm getting, and it's showing me how the nervous system is really responding to the trauma and our instinctual mechanism to be able to heal.
That's interesting. So in a way,
and that
all those other modalities hadn't done that.
They really they hadn't done it to that level.
Right.
For me to be able to really see that instinctually we have the ability to repair, mm-hmm. instinctually, if we just have a little bit of guidance and help to do that. And that guidance and help was that the SE, and learning how to do that with clients and guiding them through something that they have been stuck in for most of their lives, and to help move it through in a different way so that they can feel empowered in their own instinctual brainstem body awareness that something has shifted, not just their thoughts, mm-hmm. not just their emotions, but at a whole nother intuitive and whole other brainstem level.
All right. I hope you enjoyed that clip by Gianna Gomez. Again, you can check out the full episode by going to the traumatherapistpodcast.com, going to the podcast page and simply typing in Gianna. I want to thank you for listening. I want to thank you, as always, for supporting this podcast. If you're interested in becoming a subscriber to the newsletter, just head on over to the traumatherapistnewsletter.com. And you can become a subscriber and get this delivered in more detail, of course, to your inbox every month. All right, folks, stay healthy out there and continue doing the amazing work you're doing. Thank you so much.